Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how you can identify a content gap in your own thinking, in a public discourse or in any market. It's a very useful approach because by identifying the content gap you can see the connections that others are not yet making and use this insight to generate interesting research questions and ideas. For example, here you have a visualization of Google search results for the term bias made with Infranodus, the tool that we'll be using. And as you can see, normally the search results, they cover a variety of different topics, but here these two topics, motivated crime and health stigma, are not very well connected. So Infranodus is pointing our attention that in the public discourse about bias, there exists this content gap between motivated crime or hate crimes and health stigma associated with weight. So it proposes us to think of a connection between these two topics, and we can use the built-in AI to generate an interesting research question that can stimulate our thinking in this direction and help us bridge these ideas. Not only it's good for the discourse itself because we will be contributing something new, but it's also good if you're, for example, creating content and you want it to rank higher in Google search results, because when you create content that links those two topics together and also touches upon all the other topical clusters that exist out there on this topic of bias, you will be actually contributing positively to the discourse. Google will see it and it will consider that your content has high informational gain because it adds something to the discourse in a constructive way where it touches upon the most important topics, but where it also connects the topics that are not yet connected in a way that others have not yet done, so that your content will be considered to be of high quality because it's touching upon all the different islands and topics that exist in the discourse, but it connects them in new ways. So this will be one approach that we'll be using, and another approach that we'll use is actually often used in search engine optimization, and it's a slightly different approach where you analyze the website of your competitors and your own website and see what are the keywords that your competitors rank for that you don't rank for, and then you target those keywords. And I will show you how you can do that using Ahrefs, a popular SEO analysis tool in Infranodus. And finally, I'm also going to show you how you can compare the current demand and supply. So this is another way of looking at content gaps. Instead of analyzing one discourse, you actually analyze two different discourses and you overlay them on top of each other to see what people search for but don't yet find. And I will show you how you can do that as well. So these are all the different ways of finding content gaps, and I'm going to demonstrate each of them step by step. If you would like to try it out, you can make an account on infranodus.com and use it with your own search queries or data. So let's get into it. First of all, I will show you a very simple example using the Google search app in Infranodus. What it does is that it allows you to enter any search query. For instance, in this case, it's going to be bias. And I want to see what are the search results that exist on Google for the term bias. I click visualize, then Infranodus will visualize Google search results as a graph where the words used in the search results are the nodes and the co-occurrences of those words are the connections. Then the words that have higher influence, that connect different topical clusters together, will be bigger on the graph, and the words that appear together in the same context will have the same color. So this is how the topical clusters are identified, and then when we want to find what are the gaps inside, then we go to the content gaps folder here, and we ask the system to highlight for us the topics or the clusters of words that are not yet well connected in this context. So for example, here we come to this idea that motivated crime is not so well connected to health stigma. And we can ask Infranodus to generate an interesting research question that would connect those two disconnected clusters of words together. So here it's asking us, how can the perception of weight bias among healthcare professionals influence the prevalence and reporting of hate-motivated crimes within communities experiencing health disparities? So that's quite interesting because it's linking two topics that are not very well connected, the perception of weight bias among healthcare professionals and crime, but that's the interesting part because it makes us think of the connection that we haven't thought of before, and then we can either think of the answer ourselves and therefore stimulate our own thinking in this direction by bridging the gap between these topics, or we can ask the built-in AI to generate an idea for us that would propose something to help us get started with. So for example, here it says develop a community-led platform that educates on the health impacts of weight bias and hate crimes fostering empathy by showing how both are motivated by bias and affect individuals' well-being. So some kind of program or platform that would allow people who work in public sphere to understand what bias is and how they can reduce it. So that's almost like a perfect idea for either an application or maybe an article or even a research on this topic. So here is an example of how we can analyze an existing discourse on bias and then generate a content gap and then generate an idea based on this gap. And then what you can do after is to switch between different gaps. So for example, here there's a gap also between hate crime and personal inclination, hate crime effect processing, and then personal inclination, behavioral science. And then if you see a gap that you find interesting, then you can just do the same thing. Generate a research question, try to see if it inspires you to think of something or to develop a certain idea, or to use the idea mode to generate an idea already and then to get started with it and to create some content and research in this direction. So this is how it would work on the most basic level. Of course, you can also upload PDF documents, your own writing, anything you want, and identify gaps in your own articles. In fact, I use it a lot when I'm writing research papers or when I publish blog articles. I will just go to analyze a file, then I will upload, let's say, a few documents that I'm working on. Like I have a few PDFs here, and then I create a new graph from them. And then, in fact, I use the same approach to identify what are the topics that I haven't connected yet. So I will go to the main topics here, then to the content gaps, ask the system to highlight some of the gaps that are not yet linked, in my case. So for example, here I'm studying the concept of panarchy, and I see there is a gap between developmental change and scale complexity. So that can be interesting. I generate an idea and then I try to bridge those disjointed topics together. This is especially good if you have, let's say, a collection of notes that are disconnected or maybe some different research papers and you want to find how they all connect or to connect them in a new way. That's a great approach to do that. So that can be very interesting for researchers. In the same way, you can also analyze websites of your competitors or your own website and generate some interesting ideas based on that. For instance, if I analyze the content of the front page of this very tool that we're using, informational.com, I can analyze the URL, then I click visualize, it extracts all the text content of the front page of the landing page of Infranodus, and then it shows me, okay, look, you have the main clusters on data visualization, AI graphing, insight discovery, search analysis, but you have a gap between data visualization and insight discovery. Or you have a gap between file import and data visualization. So that can be an interesting product idea for me because it's telling me, okay, you're talking about file import and data visualization, but you're not talking so much about how data visualization can be used with those imported files and how you can enhance someone's understanding of the content or their hard drive, for instance. So why not come up with a product idea based on that? And then I click on AI idea, and then AI can generate something interesting for me, like a product idea, or an idea for a new interface and so on. So that's also really good if you want to analyze the content of your own company's websites or of your competitors' websites or even of patents, for example, and to come up with new ideas this way. Okay, so this would be the approach that you work with the documents and with the specific texts. Now I want to show you a second approach where we can actually use the content gap feature in a popular search engine optimization tool, Ahrefs. And that works a little bit differently because what you do here is that you generate a list of keywords that your competitors use but that you don't yet rank for. And the way that it works is that you go to all tools, competitive analysis, and then you type in the website you want to analyze. So in this case it's Infranodus, the tool we're using. It automatically identifies the main competitors to this tool. And then when you click show keyword analysis, it shows you that you have a content gap here and that there are some keywords that you don't rank for. So here it shows no rank for the target. So that means that Infranodus is not ranking for those keywords, but the competitors are ranking for them. And what you can do is to even say, okay, I want the keywords where at least 2 competitors rank in the top 10. So you can sometimes apply those extended filters. In this case, it's going to be difficult because all these competitors are very different. So you can really play around with those filters, but even on that very basic level, you see the keywords that they rank for, but you don't. So what you can do is to export a list of those keywords as a CSV file and then import it inside Infranodus. So for that you will create a new graph, go to File Import, I go to Downloads, choose this file. I say I want to analyze the column with the keywords. Okay, so this is the column I'm going to be analyzing, and I'm going to use the volume and the keyword difficulty as the filters. I will show you how the filters can be very useful here. And then I will say I'm analyzing the content gap here. So I give this graph a new name, click Visualize. Works the same way. It imports all these keyword combinations here. And then it shows me, okay, so when my competitors rank for something, they will mostly rank for analysis software and also qualitative data here, right? So I can already see the cluster that I'm not ranking for so well. Qualitative analysis, software for qualitative analysis, maybe also tool, analytics tool, so kind of like these technical terms. Infranodus is a text analysis tool, but it could rank better for data analysis and for qualitative data analysis software. Okay, so this is the first insight I get just from visualizing the graph. However, what I can also do is to apply a filter here, and I will say, okay, show me the keywords that have a relatively high volume. So let's say from 50 to 500. I don't want to choose the highest volume because I don't want to compete with the highest volume words. Okay, so this is almost the same. And then I add another filter and I say I want keyword difficulty that's very low. I select this filter, and then here I need to choose that I need to see the overlap of those two filters. Let's see if something comes up. Okay, so this is a better picture because it shows me the most important keyword combinations I should rank for. And if I want to further filter them, I can choose the filter here. So then now I'm just going to see the graph of the keywords that have low difficulty and relatively high volume. Okay, so here I choose, and it shows me a much sparser graph where I can see that analysis software, content analysis software ranks pretty high, and I can see content analysis software. That's something that my competitors rank for. The keyword difficulty is low, the volume is relatively high, and this is something that I could target in my marketing strategy and breach this gap because my competitors are ranking for it, but I'm not. So that could be possibly very interesting thing to do, to target this cluster of ideas and to bridge this gap and to then have Infranodus rank as high as the competitors for these queries. And then I can do the same for the others. For example, analytics tool, text analytics tool. That's also something they rank for, Infranodus doesn't rank for. So that can be interesting as well. So this is a more traditional way of how content gap analysis is done, where you analyze how your content is different from other people's content. So that's something that's very different from what we analyzed first, where we were just analyzing your writing or the files that you're working on. This is where you compare different texts together. And this is also a very powerful approach because it lets you see how you can stand out among your competition and find where they're ranking high for that you could also rank for. So it's kind of like a way of exploring new markets. Then one last thing I want to show you is a simple example how you can do this comparative analysis, but on the current demand and supply for certain keywords. So for example, let's say I'm interested in this data analysis software. I'm going to go to Study a Market app here. I will type in data analysis tools, and I will go to demand versus supply, and then I use the search engine optimization app. And what this app does is that it builds two graphs. One is the graph of the search queries that people use to look for data analysis, okay? And another graph is the graph of the search results they get. Then it overlaps those two graphs on top of each other, and it shows me what exists in search queries but not in search results, okay? And this is a gap because people look for these things but they don't find them. And here I see exactly the relationships between the terms that are not served by the Google search results for this query, data analysis in this case. And that lets me very quickly see where there is a gap between the current informational demand, what people search for, and the current supply, what people actually find. You can actually see this easily if you go to compare field, and then you see that this is the SERP data analysis. So this is the search results page for data analysis. You see there's a lot about Microsoft, Tableau, Power BI, so all these tools, AI analysis, statistical analysis, and so on, right? So this is what people find. Then original graph, That's the keywords. That's what people search for. Okay, so this is just what they search for: research techniques, analytics, Excel. And then when we click here, difference in search queries but not in results, we see the combinations of keywords that people use that they don't find so much results for. So for example, if I click on analytics, I see that it's connected to technique. So data analytics tools and techniques. So if I create content that is talking about data analytics techniques, I'll probably rank higher in Google search results because I will bridge this gap. People search for it, they don't really find it so easily. So this is one cluster. Then research technique is another. So data analysis and research techniques, or data analysis techniques in research. So this is one other cluster I could also focus on. Also Excel, it seems to be a popular tool that is a bit underserved. So there's a gap for the content in this area. And I can go to content gap here and see all this information listed in the tab here. I can also apply a more aggressive filtering and ask Infronodos to reveal only the notes. So these are actually the words that are not used in the search results, and I see that people look for free, so that I can remove. That's not so interesting to me. But PDF methodology is something interesting because I see that they search for PDFs with the methodologies, but it doesn't really exist at the top of search results. So perhaps I could make something where there is a landing page on various data analysis methodologies, and I can also offer PDFs that people can download. So that would be one thing to do. And then another thing is this data analysis tool online, and also Reddit. So that means I can go on Reddit and post about this tool. So that can be very interesting. And also quantitative research, and to use specifically this phrase quantitative can be good because it's a bit underserved. So there's a gap in that people search using the word quantitative, but they don't find so much results that talk about that. So if I add this word into my content, then Google will think that it's relevant because people do use it to search for this information. So that can be another interesting insight for us to have. All right, so these are the three approaches that you can use to detect content gaps in your own text, in a public discourse, in the market. And as you saw, the first one is just based on analyzing your own files or existing public discourse or your own notes. This is where you identify content gaps by highlighting them in the network and reiterating them. Another approach was through the content gap feature in Ahrefs, where it generates a list of keywords that your competitors rank for, but you don't. So that's another approach. And the third one is overlapping the graphs of the current informational supply and demand and seeing what your potential clients search for but don't yet find. And this is a content gap that you can target to make sure that your results cater to whatever it is that people are interested in that is not served by others. And in general, I think it's a very nice approach to things because you're creating content that's really needed out there. You're not just replicating what already exists, but you find what is missing, what are the gaps that exist, what are the things that are underserved, what people are searching for but don't find, and target those. And I think in the age where there is too much content produced, it's actually a good thing because you're creating something that will contribute positively to the public discourse, to the market, and to the consumer and to your readers' needs. So I hope you find it useful. If you would like to try it out, you can do that on infronodos.com. And I will link in the description to this video a link to the article that explains how to do content analysis and content gap analysis in detail, so you can follow it step by step and try all these different approaches. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Thank you.